hoch mit Schwung voran marschieren die Preußen und machen Mann, es gibt niemanden auf.
Welcome to Nationalist Book Reviews. This channel is dedicated to uncovering and reviewing the books that the modern world wants you to forget, works that defend European identity, national pride, cultural heritage, and the unapologetic truth about our history and our people. Here, we examine the books that help shape nationalist consciousness and European identity, the ones mainstream historians either ignore or actively try to bury. Today, we are diving into the memoir that is much about the spirit of a nation as it is about the mechanics of flight. We're looking at The Sky My Kingdom by Hanna Reitsch. Most people know the name, but few understand the sheer iron will behind it. This isn't just a story of a woman in the cockpit. It is a chronicle of a person who viewed her talent not as a personal hobby, but as a sacred tool for her country. From the soaring heights of the Alps to the desperate final days in Berlin, Reitsch's story asks a question we often grapple with today. What does it truly mean to be devoted to your homeland when the world is turning against you? Let's get into it. So who was Hanna Reitsch? Hanna Reitsch was not merely a pioneer aviator. She was a symbol of unwavering national pride and discipline. From her early years in Silesia, she dedicated her life to mastering the skies, not as a frivolous spirit, but as a solemn duty to her homeland. Her extraordinary skills, fearlessness, and relentless pursuit of excellence made her a legend among her peers and a proud representative of her nation's enduring spirit. Throughout her career, Hanna viewed flying as more than a sport. It was a sacred act of service, a way to elevate her country's technological and military prowess. She flew almost every aircraft her nation produced, pushing the limits of human endurance and technical mastery. Whether soaring in gliders over distant mountains or testing the most dangerous war machines, her resolve was rooted in a deep sense of loyalty and sacrifice. Her story is one of discipline, resilience, and a steadfast refusal to surrender her convictions, even in the face of chaos of war and the fall of her homeland. Hanna embodies the true spirit of a patriot, a woman who lived and fought for her country with the courage that inspires still today. Now, let's look into the historical context, focusing on the pursuit of technical sovereignty. To understand Hanna's ascent, one must understand the era of intense high-stakes competition that defined her world. Following the restrictions imposed after the First World War, the pursuit of aviation became more than a scientific interest. It became a vital necessity for a nation seeking to reassert its presence on the global stage. The historical backdrop of The Sky My Kingdom is a period where the sky was the ultimate frontier of sovereignty. In this era, a nation's strength was measured by its ability to master the most complex forces of nature. As Hanna details, this was not a time of casual flight, but a period of rigorous, disciplined advancement. From the High School of Soaring at the Wasserkuppe to the cutting-edge rocket research in Augsburg, every breakthrough was a hard-won victory of human intellect over the elements. For Hanna and her contemporaries, every engine tested, every glider launched, and every new aerodynamic principle mastered was a step toward technical independence. In an age where the mastery of the air was synonymous with the power to protect and the capacity to lead, aviation became the very heartbeat of national progress. This is the context of her story, a relentless, scientific and courageous drive to achieve excellence in the most advanced and dangerous arena known to man. Now let's look at the core observations, the rapid evolution of flight. The central observation of Hanna's narrative is the staggering, almost violent pace of aeronautical evolution during the early 20th century. Her story is not merely a collection of flights, but a chronological record of humanity's transition from the prehistoric era of flight to the dawn of the jet and rocket ages. Hanna documents a period where the very definition of possible was being rewritten in real time. She begins in a quiet, disciplined world of gliding, where pilots learn to read the invisible architecture of the air through simple wood and fabric machines. From there, the narrative accelerates through the mastery of powered flight and the discovery of thermals, moving rapidly into the high-stakes testing of specialized military aircraft. She captures the moment when flight ceased to be a way to soar with the birds and became a tool of strategic power. The transition from the Granal Baby glider to the vicious rocket-propelled Messerschmitt ME-163 represents a paradigm shift, a move from the gentle exploitation of nature to the brute force conquest of the atmosphere. Through her eyes, we observe that very technological leap, be it the introduction of dive brakes, the development of the helicopter, or the refinement of the rocket engine, which was a hard-won victory that demanded an entirely new level of human skill, mental fortitude, and technical understanding. Now, let's look at a rhetorical analysis of the text. We'll focus primarily on the resilient survivor. We'll call it the experimental ethos. So, when looking into the text, Hanna's rhetorical power is derived from an experimental ethos, an authority built upon the scars of survival. She does not ask the reader to trust her because of her rank or her medals, but because she has looked into the jaws of terror and refused to blink. By documenting her harrowing moments, moments of physical agony, mental isolation, and the total loss of control, she establishes a truth that is visceral rather than theoretical. Her ethos is defined by the transition from victim to master. She presents her suffering not as a series of misfortunes, but as a necessary process of tempering. This allows her to speak with an authority that is both humble and absolute. She is a woman who has been broken by the elements and has rebuilt herself through sheer force of will. Let's look into some examples from the text. The physicality of survival in her account of flying through a storm cloud on page 48. Hanna does not just describe the weather, she describes the dissolution of her own senses. She writes of her hands turning blue, her hair being tossed like seaweed, and the terrifying sensation of being dissolved and submerged in fear. By detailing the loss of control, where the plane becomes a shrieking entity and she is helpless in her harness, she moves from being a mere pilot to the witness of the sublime. When she eventually lands, her authority comes from the fact that she has navigated the inferno and emerged with her sanity intact. The mental fortitude of the broken. In the aftermath of her crash in the ME-163, on pages 186, we see Hanna describes the gruesome reality of her injuries, a nose that is now nothing but an open cleft, and the skull fractured in 4 places. Rather than focusing on the trauma, she focuses on the methodical recovery, her mind training, and her disciplined climbs on the roof of her house to regain her balance. This demonstrates a resilience of character that transcends physical damage. She tells the reader that her recovery was a task she approached with the same precision as a test flight. This establishes her as a person whose spirit is as unbreakable as the machines she tests, giving her the moral authority to speak on matters of courage and duty. Now, moving on to the critical evaluation. While many see this book as a mere wartime memoir, a closer reading reveals it is much more. It is a profound document that captures the technical, psychological, and spiritual essence of early flight. First, we must look at the book as a masterclass in aviation history. Hanna provides a granular first-hand account of the transition from the era of simple gliding to the cutting edge of rocket and jet propulsion. She doesn't just tell us that she flew, she explains how the machines worked. From the incremental steps of the A, B, and C gliding tests to the extreme complexities of the ME-163 rocket plane, the book offers a level of technical insight rarely found in memoirs. She provides a window into the very heart of aeronautical research, documenting the rigorous, often dangerous process of testing new designs, like the Sea Eagle flying boat, where every flight was a step toward understanding the physics of the air. But the book isn't just about machines. It is a profound study of human resilience and psychological fortitude. Hanna illustrates that flying is much of a mental discipline as a physical one. She speaks candidly about her mental training, the intense concentration exercises she practiced from her childhood. We see this in her account of training in the bed, with a walking stick to stimulate flight, a practice that allowed her to develop a reflex-like response to emergencies. Her narrative is a testament to the ability to master fear, whether she is navigating a plane through a violent storm cloud or recovering from the trauma of a near-fatal crash. Her story highlights a singular truth, that through discipline and self-mastery, the human mind can maintain clarity even when the body is in extreme peril. Finally, and perhaps the most beautifully, the book captures the sublimity of flight, that unique spiritual connection between the pilot and the atmosphere. She communicates the sheer, unadulterated joy of soaring, describing the sky not as a void, but as a kingdom of wonder. She captures the moment when the earth falls away, the warriors of the world become Lilliputian, and the pilot is left alone with the wind and the stars. Whether she is following the flight paths of vultures in South America or circling the peaks of the Alps, her writing conveys a deep, intuitive respect for the natural forces of the world. She reminds us that for a true airman, flight is not just a career, it is a way of seeing the world with new eyes. In conclusion, The Sky My Kingdom is a multifaceted work. It is a technical record of a transformative era in aviation and a study in the power of human concentration. It remains a vital testament to a life wholly devoted to the pursuit of flight. Now, let's look at some key passages and quotes from the text. Moving away from the technical aspects of the book for a moment, let's look into some quotes that focus on Hanna's views of Germany, her encounters with some of the National Socialist figures, and with her experience on the final days in the bunker. In Chapter 17, First Flights for the Luftwaffe, we find a passage where Hanna emphasizes that young Germans like herself did not want war, but rather a just peace that would allow them to survive and thrive. She believed Germany's actions were justified as self-defense or necessary measures against perceived threats, for example, communism or an encirclement by hostile powers. And I quote Hanna, "We young men and women wanted peace, but just a peace which allowed us to live. And the German people wanted it, though today the world will no longer believe it." End quote. After receiving the Iron Cross for military flying and brilliance, Hanna for the first time meets Hitler. Hanna shows admiration for Hitler's knowledge of aeronautics. This likely interaction was memorable to Hanna because it contrasted with common portrayals of Hitler. Hanna quotes, "His knowledge of technical aeronautics, reflected in the searching pointedness of his questions, struck me as remarkable for a layman." End quote. Hanna describes her interaction with Himmler in Chapter 25, Conversations with Himmler. Here she first mentions how her family avoided mentioning Himmler's name because of his anti-Christian views. She later mentions that Himmler, although critical, was well versed in the Bible, and when Hanna tried to present her arguments and critiques of his attitudes towards Christianity, she quotes, "Himmler delivered a sharp attack on the plausibility of the Christian doctrine, showing an intimate knowledge of the Bible and supporting his arguments with many unfamiliar examples, of which I lack sufficient knowledge to be able to refute him." End quote. Although this was the case, Hanna was a woman of conviction. She moved through the highest corridors of power not as a follower, but as a person of character willing to speak her truth to those in command. She replies to Himmler, and I quote, "I cannot compel you to share this belief, but in your position you should respect and not interfere with the religious feelings of others." End quote. Hanna also confronted Himmler about the SS rumored policies undermining marriage and reducing women to childbearers. Himmler denied these claims, insisting his views aligned with hers and that his policies were misrepresented through malice or misunderstanding. As the final struggle for the capital reached its crescendo, Hanna remained. She did not flee the storm, she entered the very heart of it, standing amidst the smoke and the fire of a nation's final hours. Hanna quotes, "The air in the bunker was thick with smoke, dust and fumes. It was a place where a desperate battle raged for what remained of Berlin." End quote. Hanna was a pilot, a patriot, and a woman who found her freedom in the sky and her purpose in the service of her home. To wrap things up, my final reflection of the book is this. It does start off a little slow. The early chapters focus heavily on her childhood and medical studies, but the pace picks up significantly as you move through her career. Once you reach the final chapters, the tone shifts. It becomes more deeply rooted in the nationalist and political realities of the era, which provides a very intense historical flavor to the conclusion. If you are an aviation enthusiast, this book is a must-read. The technical details of her flight testing will keep you engaged from the very first chapter. Personally, I give this book an 8 out of 10. It is primarily a work of storytelling rather than a political manifesto, so it isn't a book you would use for revision or academic study on nationalism. However, it contains vital segments that offer a fascinating first-hand look at the mindset of that time. It is a gripping, deeply personal account of a life lived in the clouds. Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this review. In my next video, I'll be exploring a new book. If you enjoy this kind of content, please leave a like or a comment below, and make sure to subscribe for more. Stay safe and see you on the next video.
Die Fahne hoch mit Schwung voran, marschieren die Preußen Mann für Mann, es gibt niemanden auf